Lost without hope, with no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, my life began. For some of us, those words have really strong meaning because what's being said there is the fact that death that could overcome us can't anymore. There's something new, there's something brighter, something more brilliant, something more spectacular, something more outstanding, amazing, miraculous, and confounding that can take us from where we were going and can put us in somewhere where we never thought we could end up. And there's something miraculous and beautiful about it. And in that song, Death Was Arrested, I still have clear memories 3 years ago of falling off this stage, number one. And number two, of standing over there during our last part of High Def and us singing that song together in this room, and just how powerful that was. And praying that there'd be so many of us that would be able to see life overcoming death. That Jesus had given us something bigger and brighter and better than anything that we felt and anything that we thought that we could grasp with our own two hands. And it was a clear memory of me. It's one of my best memories in this room, actually. And as we've been talking through these ideas about the hard questions that we have, you know, that the hard one for me is what do we do with the idea of death being all around us? So like for example, you might not know this, but the second leading cause of death in North Texas for people ages 10 to 24 is suicide. The suicide rate has never been as high as it is now in our country, with the exception of one time. And that's when my generation was in high school, interestingly enough. And there's something about all the death that we're surrounded with. And there used to be a lack of perspective with it, where it was something that was distant. It was something you didn't hear a lot about. Death was through a TV screen, and it was through a TV show. Death was something mentioned in movies and in songs, but it wasn't anything in my world. And now the reality is, death is in our world. And right now, a teenager is more likely, if they're killed by a human hand, the hand that they'll be killed with is their own. That is the most likely death a teenager will face at the hands of another human in today's world. And a lot of it comes from believing the lies. It's these thoughts that pop up, and these thoughts start to define our reality. See, thoughts can become our reality because they shape what we see through what we feel. When what we feel starts to shape what we see, everything changes. When what we see, instead of it being filtered through truth, instead of it being filtered through fact, when what we see is filtered through what we feel, and if we could have that slide come up, I would greatly appreciate it. When our thoughts become reality because they shape what we see through what we feel. This is a powerful, powerful statement because we live in a world right now where our feelings are on, especially with where you're at, in your phase of life right now, in your station of life. One of the reasons why sometimes you have a hard time having communication with your parents is because what they don't understand is where their emotions might stop at 8, yours goes to 17. When you feel yourself angry, you can go up clicks that I don't go anymore. When you get sad, your sadness can go up clicks that I don't go up anymore. And as a member of the older generation, I have to remember that. Because if I forget that, I forget how to love you and pray for you the way you need to be loved and prayed for. And the reality is this. The problem with having feelings that will go 7 or 8 clicks higher than they will at any other point in your life is that it's so hard to navigate life without your feelings becoming your primary filter. The thoughts that destroy us take truth and they twist it into lies. And normally feelings are a huge part of that. One of the biggest things that these lies do is these lies try to take what's temporary and try to tell you that what's temporary is permanent. And I'll tell you, this is one of the dangerous lies because you will make a lot of bad choices when you start to confuse what's temporary for what's permanent. There are people, and I'm not talking about really bad tattoo ideas. I'm talking about a lot of other things. I'm talking about people who make life-altering choices with their families, life-altering choices with death and life because of temporary problems. Some of you have known people that have come to you and they've talked about being suicidal over a breakup. And the reality is, if you're in a relationship from the time you're 11 to the time you're 21, I hate to be the spoiler alert, but you're probably gonna break up. That's just the reality. The odds are higher that you break up than you stay together. I can count on fingers the amount of people I know that started going out with each other in their teens and ended up together a lot further down the road. But people will make permanent decisions based on temporary conditions. The lies tell me that I won't change what I see. This is another big lie. When you look at what you perceive as your reality and the feels on that reality tell you that whatever I do won't change it. And that's when desperation seeks in. And when you are desperate, you will make desperate choices. And desperate choices usually cost a lot. The lies tell me that leaving permanently will make things better. And the true reality is that they won't. In fact, they usually make things a lot worse. So for some of us that have struggled with suicidal thoughts, and somebody tries to talk to us and they'll try to fix us, and we get frustrated with them and they get frustrated with us because they start to try to give us advice and their advice just makes it worse. And maybe you've been in that position before, either well-meaning on one side or the other. But I saw a quote from philosopher and author David Foster Wallace. I felt the need to have to put his middle name in so you didn't think it was the guy from The Office. The person who tries to kill herself doesn't do so because death seems suddenly appealing. The person in whom an invisible agony reaches a certain unendurable level will kill herself the same way a trapped person will eventually jump from the window of a burning high-rise. When the flames get close enough, falling to death seems the slightly less terrible of the two terrors. And yet nobody down on the sidewalk looking up and yelling, "Don't," and "hang on," can understand that jump. Not really. You'd have to personally have been trapped and felt flames to really understand a terror way beyond falling. So for those of us who truly felt suicidal before, the analogy is that you are trapped in a building 20 floors up or higher, and you feel like it's on fire and you have two choices. Either be consumed by flames or jump out the window and take a chance it'll make it better. That's how someone who is suicidal feels. They are picking something that seems outlandish to someone who's never been there, but to them it seems quite reasonable because of the flames they feel approaching their life to engulf them. The sad thing is that Mr. Wallace would later actually take his life. See, lies like weeds will find any place they can grow and will feed off anything that will make them bigger and stronger. And sadly enough, we live in a world that will feed lies rather easily. There are a lot of things that will feed these lies. Some of us, it's behavioral health. It's mental, it's problems that we have in our own mental health and our own backgrounds. It can be substance abuse. It can be different challenges that we face mentally or emotionally. Some of us have different personality characteristics. Some of us naturally struggle with self-esteem. Some of us naturally struggle with feeling comfortable in our own skin. If I'm very honest, I know that that's me. And certain personality characteristics will cause this battle to be harder. Some of us, it's challenging life circumstances. Maybe you've had loss or hardship in your life. Maybe you've had a harder life or a secret aspect of your life that's been very hard that you have to figure out how to navigate. Or it's risky behavior. Sometimes it's stuff that you do yourself, that you cause this to come upon yourself, where it's not necessarily that you make yourself suicidal, but because you've given into risky behavior so long, you wonder what your real value is, and that causes you to start thinking about what if and what when. For some of us, it's a challenging family background or circumstances. Some of us have mental or emotional health problems in our background, and it's nothing we can control. Some of us have that. I know I do. Some of us have environmental factors where there's certain places that we live or ways that we grow up. Now, for a lot of us in here, a lot of us probably don't have it as bad as other people might. But if you've still had a season of your life where things were really hard about where you lived and who you lived with, that's still part of your story. But the key is that we find life in the midst of death and truth in the midst of lies. Jesus said in John 8, he said, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The key is figuring out how we can be a focus on truth and not on feels. Because if our feelings are what's primarily filtering what we see and what we think, then that's going to get us into a terrible, terrible, terrible circle. And it'll do it to people we care about too. Putting my life in God's hands changes what my life is and what it means. For me personally, like I found this crazy thought, because if I'm really honest about my own story, I've struggled with suicidal thoughts going back to the time that I was in 5th grade. And part of it is a mixture of all these different things. And people would maybe try to talk to me when it would leak out, but I was really careful about letting it leak out at different times. I didn't feel the freedom to talk about it the way we do in today's day and age. In today's day and age, I feel like we've given more people the freedom to talk about it, which is really, really cool. But I didn't. And so for a long time, I lived this internal roller coaster that went up and down. And I just figured out a way to bite it back and deal with it. And if I'm very honest, this has been my primary battle in my life. Have been dark thoughts leading into darker tunnels, leading into darker moments. If I'm very honest, there was a season of my life where every day I would cross a really large bridge and would think about what it would be like if I jumped off of it. And the key to it is figuring out how you can get help. I was never courageous enough to. It's still something that I am figuring out how to navigate in victory with Christ. And the place that I've come to is kind of a moment of clarity that I had by looking at a verse in Colossians. In Colossians chapter 3, verse 1, since you have been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Because I've been raised to new life, I realize that in my perspective, and now being a little bit older and able to navigate my feelings better, that for me, I need to realize that my life is no longer fully my own. But if I've really trusted him with my life, for me and where I'm at as an adult, is I'm trying to figure out how to allow him to live through me. And that when I feel the feelings build up or pile up, that I instead come back to my truth. And my truth is that it's not me, it's he that lives in me. That it's taken me a long, long time to get to that place. And I wish I talked through it with things and people a lot earlier. In John 10:10, we read that the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And Jesus speaking says, I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly. His truth is that his abundant life, his full life, is supposed to be able to be stronger and bigger than anything that your enemy can try to steal from you, kill in you, and try to overpower or destroy around you. And when we can come to that place as a follower of Christ, it helps us at least get a handle of moving forward. Now, please hear what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that it's a remedy. It's not a cure-all. It doesn't magically make everything go away, because it doesn't. But for me, as a follower of Christ, it's the beginning of an anchor to be able to move forward with the right help and the right voices in my life and the right truths that I return to in the midst of my feelings that pile up. Now, I've invited someone else to share with us tonight. And I am tremendously proud of this woman. She is beautiful and brilliant and bright and fun. And one of the things that I love most about her is the fact that she is an overcomer. And when I first met her, she is very, very different than she is today. And I've asked her to share part of her story of walking down this road and what have been some of the differences and how that has been different now in her life. And so would you please get really, really excited for Elise William? She's gonna come out right now. That's
Hi.
not on.
It's not on.
It's
Is
not
it on? Now it
it's
is.
on. Yep.
So, yes. Hi, I'm Elise. If you don't know me, I am pretty involved here around PTSM. I lead a small group on Saturday nights, and I'm on the worship team, and I usually play keys. I sang for the first time tonight, last minute. That was fun. It was fun. But, so suicide is something that I've struggled with for a long time. And so it all kind of started in about 7th grade. I had some big life changes happen. So we took on a foreign exchange student, which, is a tremendous blessing. It's an incredible thing when, you get to let someone else into your home and just learn all about their culture. But it was always me, my mom, my dad, and my little brother. So it was kind of like, just the 2 kids. And needless to say, I definitely got middle child syndrome very quickly because she was older and she bonded with my mom and my little brother was just with my dad with sports and stuff. So I was just kind of left to I didn't really know kind of what to do. I was like, okay, well, my mom just wants to be with her all the time. My dad wants to be with him all the time. So I ended up just getting really, really isolated. And then I was super involved in athletics and I broke my ankle really bad. And I was in a boot for a long time and I wasn't able to play any of the sports. But my coaches, being so lovely, still made me sit and watch everybody play. So I was just kind of sitting there okay, everyone is having fun without me and I don't really know what to do with myself. This led me to a very dark place very quickly, and something that, I've learned through the years about just depression and mental health is that isolation is the number one catalyst. If you are feeling bad and instead of reaching out, you decide, I'm gonna go try and deal with this on my own, it will never lead to a good place. So this very quickly led to a place of self-harm and isolation. And I even left the church, which was mostly out of spite for my parents because they really wanted me to go. And, I was also one of those edgy kids. So I was if y'all ever listen to Pierce the Veil or Bring Me the Horizon, those emo bands, Elijah, I see you out there, you know what I'm talking about. I was trying very, very hard to keep up an image of someone who would do these types of things. But in reality, it was actually an issue. And I didn't see that, and I refused to see that for a long time. So for the next couple of years, this was something I very much struggled with. And so this kind of started in 7th grade. I started to see a therapist, but if you know anything about therapy, you have to be honest with your therapist. And that is not something that I really comprehended. I was I'm just gonna lie, right? That makes sense, that'll help me, or something like that. So most of the time I would just lie, I'd be no, I'm not cutting anymore, no, I'm not doing this, no, I'm not doing that. My mom, she's crazy, I'm fine, I have no issues. So I was actually dropped by a couple of therapists, and they refused to see me because I would refuse to open up and share anything about what I was going through. So I did have to go to inpatient twice. The first time I went to inpatient was the summer after 7th grade. And so if you don't know about the mental health care system, there's a couple different paths that you can take. So for me, I was an inpatient, which is overnight stay. You eat all your meals there, you sleep there, you meet with therapists there, there's group therapy, there's a lot of different things that you have to go through, and most of it is to make sure that you are not going to be a danger to yourself. There's 24-hour surveillance, there's cameras, there's people checking on you all the time. And, I was not in a place where I was ready to get better yet. So they just put me on a bunch of medication, and I said, see ya, went to the PHP, partial hospital, it's a hard word, partial hospitalization, there we go. And that was a day program where I did everything that I did in inpatient except got to go home and then transitioned to IOP, which was just group therapy. But that whole summer, I never really got better at all. It was the same thing that it was with my therapist, where I just kind of was yeah, I'm good. I'm not self-harming anymore. I'm fine. Things are great with my family. I'm happy. And pretty much just BS'd my way through it all so that way I could just go back to having the same destructive behaviors. So this continued through 8th grade, and I was still not going to church at all. I would go to adults sometimes with my parents, but it was a struggle. So I was not in a good place, needless to say. And I had a very big fight with my parents one night around Christmas time. It was right after Christmas, and it was a horrible fight. I ran away for a little bit. They had to send the cops after me. It was a whole ordeal. It was very fun. My brother stayed at my neighbor's house because they just didn't want him around. It was really hard. And that next morning, I had an appointment with my therapist anyways, but my parents were I talked to them that morning before, and that was when I was kind of ready to get better. When I was like, I think I need to go back to inpatient. This isn't good. I don't want to live like this anymore. Because my little brother, I won't be too graphic, but pretty much one night, like a couple days before, if you have younger siblings, how many of you guys have younger siblings? Yeah, a lot of us. So if you're like me, having a younger sibling, having your parents tell you something, most of the time you want to do exactly the opposite, right? Your parents are like, hey, you need to do this. You're like, absolutely not. I will not do that. But when you have a younger sibling, that's kind of like, one time what happened was I got in a fight with my mom and I started self-harming really badly, and my little brother came in my room and it was a really big thing, and he said, why are you doing this to us? And that was like a switch flipped, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not only affecting myself, because when you have depression and anxiety, most of the time you're just in your head and you don't really realize how you're affecting other people, because you're like, I'm so sad, I'm so this, I'm so that I just don't want to be here anymore. But I realized that how badly I was affecting my little brother, and because he had to go stay with neighbors a couple times, it kind of hit me then like, oh my gosh, what I'm doing is affecting more than just me. So I went back to inpatient. I was at Children's in Dallas. That was a much longer stay. I think I was there for almost 3 weeks, there through New Year's, but we did get to watch the Cowboys game on New Year's, so that was okay, that was good. And that was right around when Colby came into Preston Trail. And I did not know him at that point. Frankly, I did not want to know him. I was like, I do not want anything to do with church. See you later, God. But something that Colby did that really helped was he came to Children's to visit me, which I did not know. And my dad mentioned it, and I said, I don't want this to happen. I don't want to see him. I don't even know this guy. He's like, just give him a chance. Like, he wants to talk to you. So Colby came, and we played cards. What did we play? We played ERS, and I won, for the record. It was great.
She's really good.
That's the slap game, right? I think I made up rules along the way so I could win.
There was a little bit of that.
Yeah, I definitely cheated. It's okay. Some things never change. But something that was cool was Colby came in with the mindset of just wanting to get to know me and hear my story. And he had no ulterior motives, not, I'm gonna preach God down your throat. If you believe in God, this wouldn't be happening, sort of thing. Or if you pray, it'll all go away. That was not what happened at all. He came in and we just talked, we played cards, we had conversations. He shared some of his story, I got to share mine. And by the end of it, I was like, maybe like this God thing isn't that bad. You know, like if this is someone who loves God, then like, maybe I can like put up with him or something. Maybe I'll like try this out again. Who really knows? But so that was something that really helped. And another thing that helped was sometimes the inpatient can be destructive because you meet a lot of like people. And sometimes when a lot of people are in a bad place, you start to feed off of each other. And you learn little secrets about how to like do this and do that. But for me, inpatient ended up being very helpful because I was lucky enough that I was able to make some friends while I was there, and you're not allowed to talk to any of them afterwards, but I was lucky enough to make some friends while I was there. There's a little boy who's actually the same age as my little brother that I met, and it was like, wow, he's my little brother's age, and he's going through this. I really just needed to there's a lot of different things that happen along the way that helped, and a lot of it is just relationally. Like feeling like you're so alone and you're in such a dark place that no one understands what you're going through. The reality is no one will ever know exactly what you're going through, but there's plenty of people that can empathize, and that's what I really learned. I think the biggest thing, how did Jesus, Colby kind of posed this question, how did Jesus intervene in the midst of the mess? And looking back, I know that God was with me the entire time. And I refused to see that at the moment. And do y'all know the story of the footprints in the sand? So, okay, it's kind of like an older thing. So there's this guy, and he has a dream that he's walking on the beach with God. And God is with him, and all these different moments are playing from his life. And, he looks, and there's a second set of footprints next to him and his own. And it starts playing the hardest times of his life, and he turns to God and is like, God, I don't see your footprints in this moment. Where were you? And God says back, that's when I was carrying you. And that's something that, looking back, I think that's where I was, and God was carrying me through all of this. So I didn't see it. And just a verse that has helped me really see that, and I think just sums up just how Jesus intervened is Romans 8:38 through 39. And it's, for I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. And that verse is just so powerful to me because it sums up how, you know, even if you don't want God around, he's gonna be around. Even if you're sitting there, eyes closed, like a little kid who doesn't want to eat their peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner, wants the crust cut off and is refusing to eat, God is still gonna be there to force you to eat that peanut butter and jelly sandwich with the crust on, you know? And he does not care if you don't want him around because God loves you and he's always gonna love you, and there's nothing that you can do to stop him from that. And another thing that I get asked a lot is like, what's different? What's changed? You know, how are you? Colby said, like, I am not the same person I was then, 100%. But the reality is it never goes away. And I think that's something that people don't understand all the time, is that, you know, depression is an ongoing battle for me. As recent as August, I had a self-harm relapse, you know, just being completely honest. And, you know, it's hard to talk about, but the biggest thing that's been different is knowing that I am enough. And I have to, sometimes what you have to do is take a God perspective on things. Not like, oh, I am God, but, you know, look through a lens of like God. How does he see you? God sees you as perfect. God sees you as loved. God sees you as created in his image. And the reality is God would not have given me a mental illness if he did not have a purpose for it. Everything God does is so intentional, and you never really see it at the time, because at the time you don't want to see it, is the reality. When you're going through something hard, the last thing you want someone to do is come up and say, have you prayed about it? Like, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm like dealing with something and someone's like, why don't you pray about it? I'm like, why don't you shut up? Frankly, I don't know how that's gonna help right now. But I think that's the biggest thing, is knowing that God has a plan for every little thing. And I don't think that if I hadn't gone through what I had gone through so early, I wouldn't be on this stage today. Because the reality is, having depression and anxiety forces you to grow up really fast. You kind of lose a lot of your childhood. But, you know, because of that, I was able to join worship team at a young age as more mature, and now I'm able to lead worship down at a church in Dallas, at a church plant, which is so cool. And the reality is, like, God gave me this as, I hate to say it, but it's almost like a gift, because now I've been able to, you know, relate to more and more people. And it's just incredible how something so crappy can be so great in the end. And because, you know, God redeems your pain. All your pain has a purpose. He's never just gonna give you pain and be like, sorry, deal with it, have fun, I'm gonna peace out now. No, God is gonna redeem that pain and turn it into something beautiful. And that's just so incredible to me. So if y'all are struggling yourselves, I know how hard it is, and it sucks. And you feel alone, and you feel crappy, and you feel like no one cares about you if you're anything like me. And something that I would tell you is that growth is not linear. No one all of a sudden, no one goes from a terrible place and just goes straight up. You know, this isn't, what is it, algebra. It's not a linear graph or something like that. It's gonna be like cubic or one of those. I don't really know. I have a bad grade in math right now, it's okay. But, you know, growth is not linear, and there's gonna be ups and downs. It's gonna be hard at times. Most of the time, it's gonna suck, because someone is gonna be like, oh my gosh, you've changed so much. And you're gonna be like, I feel the exact same. So I don't know what Elise you're saying, but that is not how I feel. And another thing is that relapse does not equal failure. You know, I don't know if any of y'all are like familiar with drug addiction or anything, but plenty of people who go through drug addiction have relapses along the way. No one does an incredibly like addictive drug like heroin, goes to rehab once and is all of a sudden like, oh, I'm fixed now. Like, never gonna have that temptation again. Like, so for me, like, self-harm is always gonna be a temptation, because that's what I learned to cope with. And, you know, there's relapses along the way, and it sucks, and sometimes you feel like a failure, because, you know, that's just how it is. But no, you're not a failure, because again, God is gonna use that pain and redeem it for something greater. And know that you're never too far from God either. You know, if y'all know anything about King David, he made some crazy decisions and a lot of things that he really felt like God wanted nothing to do with him, and God still said, no, I'm gonna use you, and you're gonna become a great king, and you're going to rule over Israel, and you're going to do this. No matter how crappy of a king or a person you think you are, you can do this because I'm empowering you to. And the biggest thing that I think you have to remember when you're struggling is that you can be a masterpiece and still a work in progress. Mm-hmm. If you know, so at the Vatican, all of the oil paintings have never fully dried. Kind of crazy, right? So if you ever go to like the Vatican or anything, which is in Italy, it's kind of a weird place to be like, if you ever go to the Vatican, but you know, if you go there sometimes, you'll see people with little Q-tips, like Q-tips for your ears, going along the edges of the baseboards where all the paintings are and cleaning the dust off of them. Those paintings have never fully dried. They still are getting worked on day in and day out. And by the time they finish it, after years and years and years, it's time to start over again. And you know, these incredible paintings that were done 400 plus years ago are still being worked on today. You're never done growing. God is never done using you. Until you're in his kingdom, you are someone that he can use to love other people and share your story more and more. And so if you have a friend struggling, that can be very, very hard, because I know if you're anything like me, you like to fix things. You want to just put a Band-Aid on it, put some Neosporin in a Band-Aid and be done. Be like, that's it, I did that. You're a project and you're done. But human beings are not projects, and that's something that I've had to learn, especially meeting a lot of people and mental health and stuff. You just want to fix everybody. You want to take away everyone's pain. You want to take it on yourself. Be like, no, talk to me. I can help you. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to step back, and something I've had to learn is love from a distance. You love for that person. You pray for them. You're there for them, you know, not in times of crisis. Because the reality is, who's like 15? 15? Is there any 14-year-olds? See, as a 14-year-old, if you have a friend that comes to you and is like, I want to kill myself, as a 14-year-old, you are not equipped to handle that. And that's hard to hear, because I know that like you want to sometimes, but you sometimes just have to do your best and trust God with the rest, and know that it's not your fault. I know for me, I always felt like if someone came to me and was like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, I was like, I didn't do enough for them. I wasn't a good enough friend. I wasn't a good enough this, I wasn't a good enough that. But it's not your fault. If someone is struggling with something, there's a true issue there. No one just has those thoughts and feelings because there isn't something underlying. And it is not your fault. You know, God loves them, and God is doing things in them that you will never be able to understand, because you are not them. And it's hard, and it's crappy, and you just want to fix everything, and you want to make it all go away. But, you know, the reality is you can't always fix things, and you can't do everything, and you have to say no sometimes and say, no, this is a boundary that I'm setting. I'm going to have to tell an adult now, and they're going to be mad at you, because I was that person. People saw like different like cuts and stuff, and they would go tell people, and I would get mad, and I was like, I can't believe they would betray me like this. How could they do this to me? I thought we were friends. And the reality is that is something that a friend should do. And looking back, if those people had not gone and told a counselor, or not gone and told my mom, I would not be here. You know, think about it. If you're the person, if you keep that to yourself, that is literally the difference between life and death for that person. And it's a heavy thing to say, but it is. When someone comes and shares something with you, you have the power to take it to someone who can handle it and can do something. Because as teenagers, it is not our job to try and fix people that are dealing with something this heavy. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
That's it. That's my story.
Yeah.
That's kind of how God has worked through me. Thanks for letting me share, you guys.
Yeah. I'm very proud of you. I want to take a moment and pray for Elise. Elise, you're very courageous, and I'm exceptionally proud of you. Sorry. I'm just so thankful you're alive. I'm thankful that you're in my life. I'm thankful for the many lives you touch. I'm thankful that you've given God a chance in your life. And I'm thankful that you're here.
Thank you.
I'm going to pray for you. God, thank you for Elise. She's a gift, and we love her. We can't imagine our lives without her. And we thank you that you saved her in more ways than one. We thank you that she's honest about where she's at, and that she knows that she's your masterpiece, but she's also a masterpiece in progress. And Lord, I pray that she would continue to lean on you and learn from you, and to be an inspiration to others. We love her. In Jesus' name, amen.